hiking, which is...
Can you start again, please?
Okay. All right. So I want to introduce Matt Jackson. And Matt's going to be talking about the Triple Crown of hiking, which he states is the AT, the PCT, and the CDT. He's hiked trails all over the world, which I think is amazing, including the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, and the Continental Divide, but also the Camino del Santiago, which is in Spain, and in the Alps, the Andes, the Himalayas. He does live here in Albion, so he's a local, yay! And he's a runner, he's a hiker, and he has a nice new puppy, which we were sharing experiences with. So, welcome. We're so happy to have you here, Matt.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. So if I can talk like this, I teach with the mask on, so I'm comfortable talking. I can take it off if it's muffled. But I'll try it without the microphone. It's small enough. So thanks for the welcome. Thanks for coming. Anytime I get a chance to talk about long distance hiking, I'm pretty excited. So I'll share with you all this Triple Crown of hiking. So in truth, I did it quite a while ago. And I was racking my mind for memories because I started it almost 20 years ago when I did the Appalachian Trail. And I was just talking to my wife just before I came here, and she said, "Do you have like an intro story? Like, how did you get into hiking?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a good idea." So the very first trip I took on the Appalachian Trail was one of my first long distance hiking trips. And so I just finished college, and I had a job that paid me, it was like about $5,000 over the summer. And I said, as soon as I get done with that, I'm going to go and do the Appalachian Trail, because that was a fortune to me back then. So I went out for a training hike to just spend, I forget how long it was about 10 days. And I went up to Massachusetts where my aunt lives, and she drove me to Mount Greylock. That's the highest point in Massachusetts, and I started hiking north. So after about a day, you get into Vermont. And hiked for a few days, and I learned lots and lots and lots of things. My pack was way too heavy, and it was kind of miserable in a lot of ways. But the second or third night on the trail, I stopped at a shelter. The Appalachian Trail has all these shelters. And in walked a guy, and he was with a lady, and he was really proud because he was kind of reliving the through hike he had done just a couple of years earlier. So he had hiked the Appalachian Trail probably 2 or 3 years earlier, and he was really talking it up, and it was really exciting to hear his stories. And he was just like saying, oh, it's amazing. If you walk that way, you get to Maine, and if you walk that way, you get to Georgia, and it's all connected, and it was really exciting. So we talked, and we made dinner, and we were kind of getting ready for bed. It was probably only 9 o'clock at night, but it was October in Vermont, so about the same elevation or same latitude we are now. But this trail, this light, this headlamp comes through the forest, and we're both like, wow, it's been dark for a couple hours, so we didn't know what to make of it, and the guy was sort of like, oh, he must be, maybe he's a rookie. He got started too late. Turns out the guy gets in, and he's like, oh, no. He's like, I got to get to Katahdin, to the north point of the Appalachian Trail. I got to get there by October 15th because it closes. And the guy said, October 15th? That's whatever it was. It was like 10 days away. So no way, it's impossible. And he's like, well, that's why I'm hiking so late. See, I'm doing like 40 to 50 miles a day, and it turns out this guy I don't know if anybody's heard of him, his name was Brian Robinson, his trail name is Flying Brian, and in 2001, it was the year, he was doing the entire Triple Crown in a calendar year. So he had started from Mount Springer in Georgia on January 1st, and he hiked to this point in Vermont. And there was such deep snowdrifts that he was only doing a few miles a day that he stopped where he was, and he went out and he hiked the CDT and the PCT, finished those, And so he was coming back, and he had to finish by October 15th, because that's when Mount Katahdin, when Baxter State Park, they wouldn't let anybody else climb it in the year. So that was my first backpacking trip, and I met this amazing individual who's I still think of as like a big giant trail celebrity. So that was super exciting, and I think ever since then I was like I should do the CDT and the PCT later on. Like I hadn't even heard of them at that point. So that was extremely exciting. So I'll talk a little about each one. You can see I did them in a even year pattern there, mostly so I could save money and then hit the trail the following year. So the good news, bad news, I have more pictures as the trails go on. I actually don't, I have a lot of pictures for the Appalachian Trail. I don't have access to them, so they're somewhere buried in my parents' garage somewhere. So I won't talk lots and lots about the Appalachian Trail. I think that's the one that's most familiar to folks, but feel free to ask any questions at the end. Hopefully there'll be time where we can just answer any questions you all want to know, because I think it's a giant topic that 45 minutes won't do a lot of justice to. So anyway, I don't have any actual pictures of the AT, but I was in Harper's Ferry just a few years ago. And Harper's Ferry has a log of everyone that walks through there. It's kind of the halfway point of the Appalachian Trail. And I said, "Ooh, let's go look and see if we can find 2001." And there is the picture of me in 2001. So you can see I rode around the side of it. I started in Maine on July 29th. I was in West Virginia on October 8th, so around this time of year. And I still had about half the trail to go. So I ended up finishing, I believe, on early December, I don't know, December 5th or so in Mount Springer in Georgia. So that's about all the pictures I have of the Appalachian Trail. And so you can see my really old address there. My trail name was Pi, so the Greek symbol there. I was always enamored with mathematics, so I actually teach a course at Albion College in math, so it's still somewhat true. And I was really excited. My hiking partner, I hiked over half of the trail with him, and I hadn't talked to him in years. His trail name was Gravy. His picture is right next to mine because we went in together. And actually, when I saw a picture of this that I had taken, I tried to email him, and Juno no longer exists, I don't think, so it bounced back. So I've been trying to get in touch with him for a couple of years because I've lost touch. But
what is the 74 month?
That's the number of for southbound hikers, because I did it the wrong way. So most hikers start in Georgia and they finish in Maine. And there's probably a couple thousand a year, even at that point in time. So southbound hikers, we're the very end of the pack. So there might have been just 10 or so behind us, but there's probably less than 100. So yeah, he was number 74 to come in to West Virginia and say, "I'm a thru hiker," and they take your picture and put it in there. So I think that's what that number was. And that is Harper's Ferry from the Appalachian Trail when I was there. I think you're only in West Virginia for about, when you cross that little area of land between two rivers there. So you go from Maryland to West Virginia to Virginia. But that's from just a few years ago, and that's all the pictures I have of the AT, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. But
you want me to do the slides?
Oh, it's fine. We can go.
Okay.
So most of the pictures that I do have are from trail journals. So I kept a trail journal for the Pacific Crest Trail and for the Continental Divide Trail. And I would either mail my journals back. I think my sister did them one for one of the trails, and my mom did them for the other years. So she would transcribe everything that I wrote. And it's I don't think super interesting because I was 23, 24 years old, but kind of interesting for me to go back and look. But at this point, for you all, I wouldn't highly recommend it. But I'll take some of the pictures I took off the trail journals. So I did do the Pacific Crest Trail the right way. So I started in the south, which is the Mexican border, and hiked up to Canada. So I started a little later than most folks and finished sort of right in the middle of the pack. So there I am. White was probably a pretty bad choice to wear. So you can see that.
Why is that?
Yeah.
It's pretty dirty, dusty.
Oh, but it's
Yeah.
not reflecting.
It does, yeah, true. Um,
Is this focused?
so I basically started with a buzz cut and no beard, and I didn't shave or cut my hair, so you can kind of get some pictures of me progressively as the hair grows out. That wall behind me is sort of a corrugated, like makeshift tin wall of that's the Mexican border. So you can actually go over there and peel it back at that point in time and crawl through to Mexico. So of course we all did to touch the Mexican soil. And the first month of hiking is really kind of like this. I'm sure I took more pictures, but it's a Chaparral Land. So Chaparral is this like shrubby mix that you can't walk through, you can't really see through. Most of the time it's about 8 to 10 feet high. So you're just walking along under these perfect blue skies, but there's really not much to see. So it was a lot of fun, but also, yeah, not the most scenic or exciting hiking. At that time, the Pacific Crest Trail was, their water sources were sometimes 30 miles apart. So the very beautiful and amazing thing is trail angels would leave these water caches. So they would always say you can't 100% rely on it. So at the beginning of that 30-mile space with no water, we would all set off with, I don't know, probably 2 or 2.5 gallons of water. And then luckily every cache area that I hit actually was fully stocked with water, which you can see Gatorade on there. Every once in a while there would be a beer on there, so it was definitely appreciated and exciting. But yeah, there were several of those along that really dry stretch, so we definitely really appreciated that. Hiker trash is just a term that hikers, long distance hikers, use to just describe ourselves. It's just anytime hikers gather, then we have so much stuff and it's all stinky and there's no way to make it actually clean. I'm sure you guys can relate. Everybody spreads out. So this picture is taken under an overpass. And there was so little shade through the Chaparral area in Southern California that we would just, any area for shade during the day, we would greatly appreciate and take up. So all of these hikers had just gathered on this underpass to just sleep and relax while the sun was like at its hottest point during the day.
When did you start? What day?
It was the very end of May. I want to say,
Wow.
yeah. There's a traditional start day on the PCT. It's usually like April 20 something. So I started almost a month later. But I very quickly caught up to folks that were making a more leisurely hike, so spending a lot of time just relaxing in towns. But I was younger and faster at that point. So yeah, that's a group of hikers just relaxing out there. I've always worked with wildlife. I used to work with herpetologists, so any chance I got, I would try to catch interesting wildlife. So there's horny toads all over out there. I don't know if you guys have seen them. They're little lizards that are spiny and totally harmless. So I'd catch them a few times a day and take pictures of them and see if I could get them to move around. So that's what that is. So anyway, after a month of kind of like the desert, there were 2 mountain ranges I think you walked through, the San Jacintos and the San Bernardinos, which are close to Los Angeles. You finally get to the Sierras. So this was incredibly exciting because you're actually in the true mountains. You get to a much higher elevation, so it's much cooler. There's water everywhere because there's lots and lots and lots of snow still at this point. So you don't have to worry about water caches. You don't have to worry about the monotony of just seeing the same thing all the time. It brought its own challenges. This is the top of Mount Whitney. Almost every hiker will take a detour there. I think the trail goes right by Mount Whitney, but doesn't go over the top of it. So it's like a 8-mile hike or so. I took a lot of side trips on the Pacific Crest Trail. I hiked down into Yosemite Valley and took a day and just kind of spent the day down in Yosemite Valley. So the Pacific Crest Trail goes through Sequoia National Park, Kings Canyon National Park, Yosemite National Park, but it doesn't see the truly iconic, beautiful areas of those parks. It doesn't actually pass by any sequoia trees because it's so high up on the ridge lines. So at every opportunity, we would branch off and hike down and spend a day down in the more scenic parts of the park. Everything we did was scenic, but maybe the more postcard worthy pieces. So the High Sierras was, I think that's Forester Pass, maybe over my left shoulder. I'm not 100% sure, but this was the big, can we get through it? Because it's the highest point of the Pacific Crest Trail. It's about 13,000 feet. So it's always is there going to be too much snow? And do I need an ice axe? And a hot topic among us hiking at the time was, should I carry a bear canister? Which I always would now, but I didn't at the time. So I hiked with another kind of trail celebrity. His name is Billy Goat. He hiked the PCT every single year for probably 15 or 20 years. And he kept doing it after I hiked with him, but I hiked with him mostly through the High Sierra, and he knew spots in the High Sierra that he said, oh, no, there's these two rocks that if we